You're too old to understand the cloud, the new manager said. He revoked my admin access. I sat back and watched. He accidentally deleted the production database. When he turned to me panicked, I pointed to the door. I can't help. I don't understand the cloud. Sup Reddit. So my new manager called me a dinosaur who couldn't understand modern technology. Stripped my admin access. Told me to stay in my lane. Then he nuked the entire production database and came running to me for help. I gave him exactly what he asked for. Nothing. I, 52 male, spent 19 years as the senior systems administrator at Whitmore Financial Services in Columbus, Ohio. Not a glamorous job. Not something that gets you noticed at corporate retreats or company newsletters. But when the servers stayed up, when the backups ran clean, when security patches deployed without breaking everything, when disaster recovery actually worked, that was me. Invisible work. The kind people only notice when it stops happening. Started there in 2005 when the company ran everything on physical servers in a basement that smelled like burnt coffee and anxiety. The server room was basically a converted storage closet with industrial fans duct taped to the ceiling because the building's HVAC couldn't handle the heat load. I spent my first 3 months just getting that room to stop triggering fire alarms every time we spun up a new machine. Watched the whole industry transform over those 19 years. Helped migrate us from physical servers to virtualization back when VMware was still convincing people it was actually useful. Built our first hybrid cloud infrastructure when AWS was still mostly used by startups who couldn't afford their own hardware. Designed the backup systems that saved us during the ransomware attempt in 2019. 3 days of recovery work that kept the company from losing 8 years of client data. Wrote documentation that trained 3 generations of junior admin. Mentored maybe 15 people through the years who went on to run IT departments at other companies. Got Christmas cards from some of them still. Not because I was particularly warm or friendly, I'm not, but because I taught them things they couldn't learn from certifications or YouTube tutorials. 19 years of institutional knowledge. 19 years of knowing which systems were held together with digital duct tape, which vendor contacts would actually answer the phone at 3 a.m., which legacy configurations looked terrible but actually worked better than the modern alternatives. 19 years of keeping the lights on while everyone else got the credit. Then came Monday morning, February 12th. Conference room A mandatory IT department meeting at 9 a.m. sharp. Our CTO, Barbara Whitmore herself, stood at the front looking like she'd rehearsed this speech in front of a mirror. Third generation Whitmore running the family company. Decent boss overall, stayed out of technical decisions, trusted her people, only micromanaged when something caught fire. I'd worked with her for 12 years and generally respected her judgment. Behind her was a guy I'd never seen before. Mid-30s maybe. Expensive haircut that probably cost more than my car payment. Bluetooth earpiece he definitely didn't need in a conference room. One of those slim-fit suits that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Standing there with his hands clasped behind his back like he was posing for a LinkedIn profile photo. Barbara cleared her throat, said the company was entering a new phase of digital transformation. Said the competitive landscape demanded innovation and agility. Said we needed fresh leadership to drive that transformation forward. Said she was proud to introduce our new director of IT infrastructure, Brandon Kessler. Brandon Kessler. The name alone sounded like it came with a trust fund and a sailboat. She mentioned his credentials like she was reading from a brochure. MBA from Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management. 5 years at some cloud consulting firm in Chicago that I'd never heard of. Certified in 7 different cloud platforms. AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and 4 others I'd probably never use. Speaker at 3 industry conferences last year. Author of a white paper on digital transformation best practices. What she didn't mention was any actual hands-on experience running production systems, any real-world disaster recovery, any understanding of what happens when theory meets reality at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning when everything's on fire and the executives are calling every 5 minutes asking when it'll be fixed. Brandon stepped forward. Perfect posture, confident smile, thanked Barbara for the opportunity, said he was excited to modernize our infrastructure and bring us into the 21st century. 21st century. Like we'd been running punch cards and carrier pigeons this whole time. Like I hadn't personally designed cloud migrations that handled millions of transactions per day. He talked for 20 minutes. Buzzwords stacked on buzzwords like a consulting firm had vomited on his PowerPoint. Digital transformation, cloud-native architecture, agile deployment pipelines, containerized microservices, zero-trust security frameworks, serverless computing paradigms, DevOps culture integration. Every sentence sounded like it was pulled directly from a vendor white paper. Every concept explained at exactly the level of depth you'd get from reading the first paragraph of a Wikipedia article. Not once did he mention the actual systems we ran, the specific challenges we faced, the compliance requirements that constrained our options, the real-world constraints that shaped our infrastructure decisions over nearly 2 decades. Meeting ended. People clapped. That automatic corporate applause that means nothing except we're all still employed and not willing to make waves. I stayed seated while everyone filtered out. Drew, one of my junior admins who'd been with me for 6 years, caught my eye on his way past, gave me a look that said, "What just happened?" I shrugged. Same thing that always happens. Someone decides experience doesn't matter, and credentials do. Janet, my other senior admin, lingered by the door. Mouthed, "Coffee later?" I nodded. Within an hour, Brandon scheduled individual meetings with everyone on the IT team. Mine was at 2 p.m. Apparently, seniority meant I got to wait the longest to hear how my life was about to change. I spent the morning doing what I always did, monitoring systems, reviewing logs, handling the 3 separate tickets that had come in overnight, a password reset for someone in accounting who'd locked themselves out again, a network connectivity issue in the satellite office that turned out to be a loose Ethernet cable, and a question about backup retention policies from the compliance team. Normal stuff, invisible stuff, the kind of work that keeps a company running, but never makes it into anyone's performance review as an accomplishment. I showed up at Brandon's office at 1:58. His office used to be the storage closet we'd converted into a server room before we moved everything to the data center across town. I'd helped run the cables through those walls back in 2008. Now those same walls were painted some shade of gray that probably had a fancy name like Executive Granite and decorated with motivational posters. One poster said, "Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower." Another said, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." He'd already set up 3 monitors arranged in a semicircle like he was running NASA mission control. Standing desk that probably cost more than a used car. One of those ergonomic keyboards that looks like it was designed by someone who'd never actually typed before. He gestured for me to sit in the single chair positioned in front of his desk. Didn't stand up to shake my hand. Didn't offer me water or coffee. Just pointed at the chair like I was a subordinate being called in for a performance discussion, which I guess I was. Just didn't realize it yet. First thing he said was that he'd been reviewing everyone's personnel files. Said I had an impressive tenure with the company. Said 19 years, showed real commitment and dedication. Said my experience was valuable. Then the pause. That specific pause people use right before they say something insulting while pretending they're being helpful. He said the industry had changed significantly since I started. Said cloud infrastructure required a different skill set than traditional systems administration. Said younger professionals tended to adapt faster to new paradigms. Said there was research showing that cognitive flexibility decreased with age, making it harder to adopt new technologies and methodologies. I asked if he'd reviewed my actual work. The cloud migrations I'd led, the AWS certifications I'd earned on my own time and my own dime, the Azure implementations I'd designed, the disaster recovery systems I'd built that had literally saved the company from bankruptcy during the ransomware attack. He smiled, that condescending smile people give when they've already made up their mind and the conversation is just theater. When they're going through the motions of listening without actually hearing anything. Said he appreciated my willingness to learn. Said it was admirable that I'd made the effort to stay current, but said we needed to be realistic about generational differences. Said people my age often struggled with cloud concepts even when they tried to adapt. Said it wasn't a criticism, just an observation about biological reality. Biological reality, like understanding distributed systems, was somehow stored in the same part of the brain that handles reaction time and memory recall. I'm 52, not 92. I've been building cloud infrastructure since before most of his certifications existed. I was deploying containers when Docker was still a startup nobody had heard of. I was implementing zero-trust security frameworks when they were still called "don't trust anything" and considered paranoid. But I didn't say that, just nodded. Let him finish his speech about fresh perspectives and modern approaches and agile methodologies. Waited for him to get to whatever he was actually building toward. Took about 15 minutes of him explaining how the world had changed and how Whitmore Financial needed to change with it, how our competitors were moving faster, how the industry was leaving us behind, how we needed bold leadership to catch up. Then he got to the point. He said he was restructuring the team, said he'd be taking a more hands-on approach to critical infrastructure, said my admin access to production systems would be transferred to him effective immediately. I asked him to clarify. Wanted to make sure I understood exactly what he was saying. He clarified. Said he'd be handling all production database administration personally. Said I'd be moving to a support role focused on documentation and legacy system maintenance. Said it was about playing to our respective strengths. My strengths, documentation and legacy systems. 19 years of keeping this company running, and he was pushing me to the corner to write instruction manuals and babysit systems nobody else wanted to touch. I asked if Barbara had approved this restructuring. He said Barbara trusted his judgment on technical matters. That's why she'd hired him. That's why she'd given him the director title and the authority that came with it. I asked if he wanted me to brief him on the production systems before the transition, walk him through the architecture, explain the redundancies and the fail-safes and the specific configurations that kept everything running smoothly. He waved his hand, said he'd reviewed the documentation, said he understood our architecture from the diagrams and the technical specifications, said cloud systems were cloud systems, same principles everywhere, said he'd managed similar environments at his previous company, same principles everywhere. Like our custom-built disaster recovery procedures, were interchangeable with some startups' test environment. Like the specific quirks of our database configuration didn't matter. Like 19 years of institutional knowledge could be replaced by reading a few hundred pages of documentation. I stood up, told him I'd forward the access credentials to IT security for the transition, told him to let me know if he had any questions about the documentation. He seemed surprised I wasn't arguing. Most people in my position would have pushed back, made a scene, demanded to talk to Barbara directly, threatened to quit or file a complaint with HR. But here's the thing. You spend 19 years in IT. You learn to recognize patterns. And Brandon Kessler was a pattern I'd seen before. The overconfident MBA who knew everything about cloud architecture except how it actually worked. The guy who'd never been on call during a critical outage. Never rebuilt a corrupted database at 2 a.m. Never had to explain to executives why the system was down and when it would be back up while they stood over his shoulder, asking the same questions every 5 minutes. Those guys always made the same mistakes, and they always made them fast. Usually within the first few months, before they'd learned enough to be dangerous in a more controlled way. I walked back to my desk, started the access transition paperwork, sent the appropriate emails to IT security and HR, documenting the change in responsibilities, CC'd Barbara on everything so there'd be a paper trail. Drew came by around 4 p.m. looking concerned. He'd had his meeting with Brandon already. 30 minutes of being told that his role was being repositioned for the new organizational structure. Asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine. Asked about his meeting. He said Brandon had talked about restructuring the whole team. New reporting lines, new responsibilities, new expectations for productivity and innovation. Said Brandon wanted everyone to complete cloud certification programs within 6 months or face performance reviews. Drew had been working in IT for 12 years. He had more certifications than Brandon probably knew existed, but apparently that didn't matter because they weren't the right certifications. I told Drew to document everything, every change Brandon made, every approval he gave, every system he touched. Keep detailed logs with timestamps and screenshots. Drew asked why. I told him documentation is always important. Left it at that. He gave me a look like he knew I wasn't telling him everything, but he nodded and went back to his desk. Over the next 3 weeks, Brandon went full speed ahead, like a kid who just gotten the keys to a sports car and wanted to see how fast it could go. Brought in 2 consultants from his old firm, guys in identical expensive suits who talked about our infrastructure like it was personally offensive to them. Every system we ran was outdated. Every configuration was suboptimal. Every procedure was a relic from a less enlightened era. They scheduled what they called an architecture review. 3 full days of meetings where they went through every system we ran and explained why it was wrong. Our database configurations were inefficient. Our backup procedures were wasteful. Our security protocols were overly complex. Our network architecture was antiquated. Brandon sat there nodding along like a proud parent, watching his kids perform in a school play, taking notes on a tablet, occasionally asking questions that showed he understood the buzzwords, but not the underlying reality. I sat in the back of those meetings, taking my own notes, not because I needed to remember what they said. Their criticisms were obvious to anyone who'd never actually run production system, but because I wanted a record of what they recommended and who approved it. Janet sat next to me in most of those sessions. She'd been with the company 11 years, started as a junior admin, worked her way up to senior systems administrator, understood our infrastructure almost as well as I did, because she'd helped build half of it. After the second day of architecture review, she caught me in the break room, asked if I was going to say anything. I told her no. She asked why. Said Brandon and his consultants were going to break everything. Said they didn't understand how our systems actually worked. Said they were making recommendations based on theory without considering our specific requirements. I told her she was right about all of that. She asked again why I wasn't doing anything about it. Because some lessons people have to learn themselves. And Brandon Kessler was about to get an education he couldn't get from any certification program. She didn't look satisfied with that answer, but she didn't push it. Then came the proposal. After 3 days of architecture review, Brandon's consultants presented their recommendations to Barbara and the executive team. Full migration to a new cloud platform, complete replacement of our database systems, elimination of our on-premises backup infrastructure, implementation of a cloud-native disaster recovery solution, consolidation of our security systems into a single unified framework. Total timeline, 6 months. Total budget, $1.2 million. Total disruption to current operations. Significant but manageable with proper change management. I sat in the back of that meeting room taking notes. Barbara was at the head of the table, asking questions that showed she understood the business implications, but not the technical reality. The CFO was next to her, focused entirely on the budget numbers. Brandon sat across from them, confident and polished, selling the vision like he was pitching a startup to venture capitalists. When they asked for questions from the technical team, I raised my hand, asked about the rollback procedures if the migration encountered problems. Brandon answered before his consultants could. Said modern cloud platforms had built-in redundancy. Said rollback procedures were legacy thinking from an era when infrastructure changes were manual and risky. Said we needed to embrace forward momentum instead of planning for failure. I asked about our compliance requirements, the financial regulations that mandated specific data retention and recovery capabilities, the audit requirements that specified how we needed to document and verify our backup procedure. One of the consultants said they'd address compliance in Phase 3 of the migration, after the core infrastructure changes were complete. Phase 3, after they'd already torn apart everything that currently kept us compliant. I asked about the production database specifically, the one that processed every transaction our company handled, the one that couldn't go down for more than 15 minutes without triggering regulatory reporting requirements, the one that held 18 months of transaction history for 300,000 clients. Brandon said production systems were his top priority, said he'd personally oversee that migration, said I didn't need to worry about it because he understood the importance. I stopped asking questions after that. Just wrote down what they said and let them finish their presentation. Barbara approved the project 2 days later. Full budget, full timeline, full authority for Brandon to implement whatever changes he deemed necessary. Brandon sent a company-wide email celebrating the decision, used phrases like bold step forward and transformational change, and innovative leadership positioning us for the next decade of growth. Made it sound like he'd single-handedly saved the company from technological obsolescence. Drew stopped by my desk that evening after most people had left, asked if I was going to fight this. I told him no. He asked why not. Said the whole team knew this was going to be a disaster. Said Janet had already started updating her resume. Said even the junior admins who'd only been here a year could see the problems with Brandon's plan. I told him to trust the process. He gave me that look again. The one that said he knew I wasn't telling him everything. I told him to keep documenting, keep logging every change, keep time-stamping everything. He said he would. The migration started in March. Brandon and his consultants worked weekends, made changes to systems I'd spent years carefully tuning, replaced configurations that worked with configurations that looked better on paper, removed redundancies they considered unnecessary, disabled monitoring alerts they found annoying. Every time something broke, they blamed the legacy systems. Never their changes, never their assumptions, never their lack of understanding about why things were configured the way they were. The test environment started failing within 2 weeks. Database connections timing out, authentication errors cascading through the system, performance issues that nobody could explain. Brandon scheduled emergency meetings, brought in more consultants, spent money like it was free. The issues persisted. I kept doing my job, documentation and legacy maintenance. Exactly what Brandon had assigned me. Answered questions when asked, provided historical context when requested, never volunteered information they hadn't specifically asked for. If they didn't want my expertise, they didn't get my expertise. Simple as that. Drew kept his logs, detailed records of every change, every approval, every decision, timestamps and screenshots and email threads, the kind of documentation that would make any auditor weep with joy. By late April, the problems had spread beyond the test environment. The production systems were starting to show strain. Performance degradation during peak hours, occasional connection drops that lasted just long enough to notice, warning signs that anyone with experience would recognize. Brandon dismissed them all, said it was expected during a transition period, said the new architecture would solve everything once fully implemented, said we just needed to push through the growing pains. Then came May 3rd, a Friday, the day Brandon decided to accelerate the production database migration. I was at my desk reviewing documentation when Drew appeared looking like someone had just told him his car was on fire and his dog was inside. Said Brandon was doing the production migration. Today. Right now. Without the testing phase they'd originally planned for. Without the compliance review that was supposed to happen first. Without the rollback procedures that even his own consultants had recommended. I asked if Barbara had approved the accelerated timeline. Drew said Brandon had approved it himself. Said he was the director of IT infrastructure. Said he had the authority to make operational decisions without executive sign-off. Said he'd told the team it was a calculated risk worth taking. I asked what the consultants thought. Drew said they'd expressed concerns. Said they'd recommended waiting another week. Said Brandon had overruled them because he wanted to hit the May deadline he'd promised Barbara. I went back to my documentation. Told Drew to make sure his logs were updated. Told him to document exactly who approved what and when. He asked if I was going to do something. I told him I was doing exactly what Brandon had asked me to do. Documentation and legacy maintenance. Nothing more. The migration started at 2 p.m. Brandon and his consultants in the server room across town. Video conference call running, so the rest of us could watch remotely. Because Brandon had revoked our production access months ago, we couldn't do anything except observe. For about an hour, things seemed to be going smoothly. Progress bars moving. Status updates appearing. Brandon sending triumphant messages to the team chat about how well everything was proceeding. Making comments about how worried everyone had been for nothing. At 3:22 p.m., he posted that they were ahead of schedule. Said the migration was proving easier than expected. Said this was what happened when you embraced modern methodologies instead of clinging to outdated procedures. At 3:41 p.m., he posted that they were moving to the final phase. Said they just needed to clean up some temporary data and the migration would be complete. At 3:47 p.m., everything went red. The alerts started cascading across every monitoring system we had. Database connections dropping, transaction processing failing, error messages multiplying faster than anyone could read them. The entire production environment going from green to yellow to red in about 90 seconds. Drew appeared at my desk, white as a sheet. Said the production database was down. I asked what happened. Said Brandon ran a cleanup script on what he thought was the staging environment, but he was connected to production. The script deleted the entire transaction table, 18 months of financial records, transaction history for 300,000 clients. Gone. I asked about the backups. Drew's face got even whiter. Said Brandon had disabled the legacy backup systems 3 weeks ago as part of the migration prep. Said the old backup infrastructure was consuming resources that the new architecture needed. Said the new cloud backup solution wasn't fully configured yet because that was supposed to happen in Phase 3. Said there was a backup from 3 weeks ago, the last one before Brandon had disabled the system, but nothing more recent. 3 weeks of financial transaction for a financial services company. Missing. I asked what Brandon was doing now. Drew said he was in his office with the door closed. Said the consultants had already left the building. Said nobody knew what to do. I went back to my documentation. Kept working. Waited. Took about 20 minutes. Brandon appeared at my desk. Red-faced. Sweating through his expensive suit. Wrinkled like he'd been wrestling with it. His voice cracked when he spoke. Said he needed my help. I looked up from my screen. Took my time responding. Asked what kind of help he needed. Said the production database had encountered an issue. Said he needed someone with deep system knowledge to help recover it. Said this was an emergency. Said the whole company was at risk. I reminded him that I didn't have production access. He'd revoked it in February. Said I couldn't help with systems I couldn't access. Said he could restore my access. Right now. Said he'd already contacted IT security. Said this was urgent. Said people's jobs were at stake. I leaned back in my chair. Took my time responding. Reminded him of something he'd said in that first meeting. About people my age struggling with cloud concepts. About generational differences in cognitive flexibility. About how cloud systems were beyond my understanding because of biological reality. His face went from red to pale. The confident smile completely gone. Just fear and desperation. I told him I couldn't help. Told him I didn't understand the cloud. His words, not mine. He started stammering. Said he didn't mean those things. Said he was just trying to establish his leadership style. Said he'd been wrong. Said we could talk about it later, but right now he needed my expertise. I pointed toward the door. Told him to call his consultants. The ones who'd designed the new architecture. The ones who'd recommended disabling the backup systems. The ones who'd said rollback procedures were legacy thinking. The ones who'd charged $200 an hour to tell us everything we were doing was wrong. He didn't move. Just stood there looking at me like I was supposed to save him. Like 19 years of experience should kick in automatically, regardless of how he treated me. I asked if there was anything else. He left without another word. By 5 p.m., the situation had escalated beyond Brandon's control. Barbara had been in client meetings all afternoon, completely unaware that her company's entire transaction history had just been deleted. Her assistant came running into the IT area looking for answers that nobody could give. I directed her to Brandon's office, told her he was the director of IT infrastructure, told her he had authority over production systems, told her he could explain what happened. 15 minutes later, Barbara appeared at my desk, looking exactly like you'd expect a CTO to look when they just learned their entire production database was gone, and their compliance status was about to become a regulatory nightmare. Asked what happened. I gave her the facts. Brandon's production access changes in February, the disabled backup systems in April, the premature migration this afternoon, the deleted transaction table, the 18 months of missing data. She asked if I could recover it. I told her I didn't have production access. Brandon had revoked it in February. She could check the access logs if she wanted verification. She said she was restoring my access immediately. Said she'd make the call to IT security personally. I told her I appreciated that. But the systems Brandon had implemented weren't ones I'd designed or configured. His consultants had built the new architecture. They'd disabled the redundancies I'd put in place. They'd eliminated the fail-safes that would have prevented this exact scenario. She asked what I could do. I told her I could try, but I'd need complete authority over the recovery process. No interference from Brandon. No input from his consultants. Full access to every system and every log and every configuration file. She agreed immediately. Then she asked about Brandon. I told her that was her decision, but I recommended she have someone from legal present when they talked to him, and someone from HR. This was going to get complicated. She nodded and left. I spent the next 14 hours rebuilding what I could. The 3-week-old backup was a starting point, but it was missing 3 weeks of transactions. That meant coordinating with every external system we connected to. Banks, clearinghouses, regulatory bodies, payment processors, client management systems, reconstructing records from their copies of our data, cross-referencing transaction logs, verifying account balances, building back what Brandon had destroyed one piece at a time. Drew stayed the whole night. So did Janet, both of them working through exhaustion because they understood what was at stake. This wasn't just about fixing a technical problem. This was about whether the company survived the next regulatory audit. By Saturday afternoon, we'd recovered about 60% of the missing data. Primary transaction records from external sources, account balances verified against bank statements, critical compliance documentation reconstructed from audit trails. By Sunday evening, closer to 85%. The remaining 15% would take weeks to reconstruct, but the critical systems were back online. The company could function, clients could access their accounts, transactions could process. Monday morning, Barbara called me to her office. She'd been there all weekend too. Looked like she hadn't slept any more than I had. First thing she said was thank you. Said she knew I didn't have to help after how Brandon had treated me. Said she appreciated that I'd put the company first. Second thing was that Brandon had been terminated, effective immediately. His consultants had been dismissed, and their firm was being sent a letter about professional liability and breach of contract. Third thing was a question. Would I accept the director of IT infrastructure position? I told her no. She looked surprised. Asked why not. I explained. I didn't want to be a director. Didn't want the meetings and the politics and the strategic planning sessions. Didn't want to spend my time in conference rooms talking about digital transformation when I could be actually maintaining systems that worked. I wanted to do my job. The job I'd been doing for 19 years. Keeping systems running. Building things that worked. Protecting the infrastructure that made everything else possible. What I wanted was respect. Recognition that experience had value. Acknowledgement that understanding systems came from years of actually running them, not from certifications and conference presentations and MBA programs. She asked what would make me stay. I told her 3 things. Senior Principal Systems Architect title, reporting directly to her, not through any director, and final approval authority on any infrastructure changes affecting production systems. She agreed to all 3 without hesitation. Then she asked about Brandon's replacement. If I wasn't going to take the director role, who should? I recommended Janet. 11 years of experience, strong technical skills, actually understood our systems because she'd helped build them, had the respect of the team because she'd earned it through competence, not credentials. Barbara said she'd set up interviews. The weeks that followed were about cleanup and reconstruction, rebuilding systems Brandon had broken, restoring configurations his consultants had changed, implementing proper backup procedures again, the same procedures they'd called legacy thinking and outdated methodology. Janet got the director job. First thing she did was schedule a meeting with the whole IT team to discuss changes and make sure everyone understood what had happened and why. Second thing she did was ask for my input on every major decision. The consultant's firm sent a threatening letter about defamation and breach of contract. Our legal team sent back documentation of every recommendation they'd made, every failure those recommendations caused, every dollar the company had lost as a result. The letter included Drew's logs, timestamps, and screenshots showing exactly who approved what and when. Never heard from them again. Drew got promoted to senior admin. The logs he'd kept became critical evidence for the internal investigation and the regulatory response. Every change Brandon had made, every system he'd broken, documented with the kind of detail that made auditors nod approvingly. By late June, we'd recovered all the missing transaction data. Regulatory audit found no compliance violations thanks to the reconstruction effort. The regulators were impressed by our documentation and our recovery procedures. Barbara sent a company-wide email thanking the IT team for their exceptional performance during a challenging period. Didn't mention Brandon by name. Didn't need to. Everyone knew what had happened and who was responsible. A few weeks later, I got a LinkedIn notification. Brandon Kessler had updated his profile. New position, cloud transformation consultant at some startup in Austin. His summary talked about his experience driving digital innovation at enterprise scale and leading complex infrastructure modernization initiatives. No mention of Whitmore Financial, no mention of deleted production databases, no mention of the $2.8 million the company spent on recovery, regulatory response, and client remediation. Drew showed me the profile during lunch, asked what I thought. I told him to screenshot it, might be useful someday. 2 weeks later, that screenshot became very useful. Barbara got a call from a contact at a financial services firm in Dallas. Guy named Howard Reeves, their CTO, said they were considering hiring a cloud transformation consultant. Said the consultant had listed impressive credentials and experience. Said the consultant's name was Brandon Kessler. Howard asked if Barbara had any insight into Brandon's work at Whitmore Financial. Barbara transferred the call to me. I spent 45 minutes walking Howard through exactly what happened. The disabled backup systems, the ignored warnings, the premature migration, the deleted production database, the $2.8 million in recovery costs, the 18 months of reconstructed transaction data. Howard thanked me, said he'd been skeptical about some of Brandon's claims, said Brandon had mentioned successful cloud migrations at Whitmore Financial without getting into specifics. I told Howard that Brandon's migration was successful in the same way the Hindenburg's landing was successful. It definitely happened. Howard laughed, said he appreciated the candor, said he'd be going with a different consultant. 2 days later, I got a LinkedIn message from Brandon Kessler himself. First time he'd contacted me since getting fired. The message said I was sabotaging his career, said I was bitter and jealous, said he was considering legal action for defamation, said I should stop spreading lies about what happened at Whitmore Financial, said he'd built a successful track record and I was trying to destroy it out of spite. I forwarded the message to our legal team. They forwarded it to Brandon's lawyer with a copy of Drew's documentation. Every change Brandon had made, every backup system he'd disabled, every warning he'd ignored, timestamped and screenshotted. Never heard from Brandon again. But that wasn't the end of it. 3 months after the incident, I got an email from the Ohio Department of Commerce, Division of Financial Institutions. They were conducting a review of what happened at Whitmore Financial. Standard procedure after a major data incident at a regulated financial services company. The investigator's name was Linda Patterson. She scheduled a 4-hour interview with me at our offices. I walked her through everything. The architecture I'd built, the backup systems Brandon had disabled, the timeline of the migration, the moment when everything went red. She took detailed notes, asked follow-up questions, requested copies of Drew's logs. At the end of the interview, she asked one question that stuck with me. She asked if I could have prevented the incident. I told her yes. If I'd still had production access, I would have stopped the migration the moment Brandon connected to the wrong environment, would have caught the error before he ran the cleanup script, would have saved 18 months of transaction data. She asked why I didn't have production access. I told her Brandon had revoked it in February because I was too old to understand the cloud. She wrote that down, didn't say anything else. 2 months later, the Division of Financial Institutions issued their report. No fines for Whitmore Financial. The recovery effort had been thorough enough to satisfy compliance requirements, but the report included a detailed summary of what had happened and who was responsible. Brandon Kessler was named specifically. His decisions were documented. His mistakes were cataloged. The report became public record. That report followed Brandon to his next 3 job applications. I know because 2 of the hiring managers called Barbara to verify what they'd read. Both times, Barbara transferred the calls to me. Both times, I told them the truth. Brandon's consulting career in financial services was over. Last I heard, he was working at a SaaS startup in Portland, entry-level position. No production access, no direct reports, no authority over anything that mattered. Probably telling anyone who'd listen that he was a victim of corporate politics and jealous coworkers. Meanwhile, things at Whitmore Financial settled into a new normal. Janet ran the IT department with actual competence. She implemented the changes Brandon had promised but never delivered. Properly this time, with testing phases and rollback procedures and backup verification. Drew got his promotion to senior admin. A recruiter from Seattle had tried to poach him a month earlier with a bigger title and better pay. He turned them down. Said he wanted to stay and learn more. Said there was still work to do. Barbara approved a 15% budget increase for the IT department. Said she'd learned that infrastructure wasn't the place to cut corners. The backup systems I'd originally designed were restored and upgraded. New monitoring alerts, new verification procedures, new disaster recovery testing every quarter. I got my title change, Senior Principal Systems Architect, reporting directly to Barbara. Final approval authority on any infrastructure changes affecting production systems. First time I used that authority was 3 weeks after Janet took over. A vendor pitched a new cloud backup solution, slick presentation, lots of buzzwords, promised to reduce our backup costs by 40%. I reviewed their documentation, found 3 critical gaps in their recovery procedures. Sent Janet my analysis with a recommendation to decline. She declined. Vendor was disappointed. System stayed stable. That's what the job looks like when it's done right. No drama, no emergencies, no 3 a.m. phone calls. Just quiet competence keeping everything running. 6 months after the incident, Barbara called me into her office. Said the board wanted to recognize my contribution to the recovery effort. Said they'd approved a bonus. Handed me a check for $50,000. I looked at the check. Looked back at her. She said it was the least they could do. Said the company would have lost everything without the recovery effort. Said $50,000 was nothing compared to what we'd saved. I thanked her. Deposited the check that afternoon. Bought a new truck the following weekend. My old one had 180,000 miles and was held together with hope. The new truck's nice. Nothing fancy, just reliable. Kind of like me, I guess. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true. She said, my ex is coming to stay for a week. If you're insecure, sleep at a hotel. I packed without a word and went to the hotel. While there, I emailed her landlord that I was breaking the lease. I also canceled her phone plan and car insurance. She called me 4 days later, from a payphone crying that she was homeless. All right, Reddit. This happened back in August, and I'm still processing the audacity. My buddy Dave said I needed to share this because apparently I'm not the only guy who's dealt with this kind of disrespect. So here we go. I'm 28, work as a financial analyst for a regional bank here in Colorado. Not Wall Street money, but comfortable enough that I can afford my own place. Drive a paid-off Tacoma and have a decent emergency fund. Been at the same company since I graduated. Moved up steady, no drama. The Tacoma was a 2019 model I bought certified pre-owned. Silver, double cab, off-road package. Got it detailed every 3 months and kept the maintenance schedule like clockwork. There's something satisfying about having a vehicle you can actually rely on. After a few relationships that ended because I was apparently too focused on my career and not spontaneous enough, I'd basically accepted that dating in your late 20s sucks. Everyone's either already married, divorced with baggage, or playing games like they're still in college. Then I met Jess at a mutual friend's wedding in May 2022. She was a bridesmaid, I was a groomsman. Classic setup, but it worked. This girl seemed perfect on paper. Worked as a graphic designer for some startup, talked about wanting stability, said she was tired of dating guys who couldn't commit. She wore these vintage band shirts that actually looked good on her. Had this whole aesthetic thing going. We clicked fast. She'd text me throughout the day, wanted to see me every weekend, talked about future plans. She said she loved that I had my finances together and actually had my life sorted out. Her apartment was this tiny studio downtown. Cool location, but the rent was ridiculous. She'd complain constantly about barely affording it with her freelance income being inconsistent. I made decent money. Not rich, but enough that helping her out wouldn't hurt me. About 3 months in, August 2022, her lease was coming up for renewal, and she was stressing hard about the rent increase. I don't know what I'm going to do, she said one night while we were making dinner at my place. They're raising it by $300 a month. I can't afford that. What if I helped? I offered. We're together all the time anyway. I could cover part of it. She looked at me like I'd just offered her a winning lottery ticket. Are you serious? Yeah. I mean, we're building something here, right? Partners help each other. Big mistake. Huge. So we worked it out. Her rent was $1,800 a month after the increase. I'd pay $1,200. She'd cover $600. Fair enough since I wasn't officially living there, just staying over most nights. Her lease renewal went through with both our names on it. Co-signers. Equal responsibility legally, even though the payment split wasn't equal. Then came the other stuff. Her car insurance was expensive because she'd gotten into 2 accidents the previous year. Not her fault supposedly, but insurance companies don't care about fault when they're calculating premiums. She was paying like $340 a month for basic coverage on a 2015 Honda CR-V. That's insane, I told her. Get on my policy. Multi-car discount will probably cut that in half. She did. Her premium dropped to $180 monthly, which I just added to my autopay. Easier than dealing with separate payments. Same thing with her phone. She was on some overpriced plan with a phone she was still making payments on. I had an unlimited family plan through my work that cost me basically nothing to add another line. Just switch to mine, I said. Why pay $95 a month when you can pay nothing? She switched. New phone and everything. Latest model because the promo was too good to pass up. I covered the monthly payment, like $38 added to my bill. Looking back now, I see how it happened. Little things that seemed reasonable at the time. We're together. We're serious. Partners help each other. That's what you do when you care about someone, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. But at the time, it felt natural. She'd cook dinner sometimes, keep the apartment clean, made it feel like a home when I stayed over. She talked about our future like it was a sure thing, showed me Pinterest boards of engagement rings she liked, mentioned how her sister's wedding was coming up, and she wanted to bring a serious boyfriend. Christmas 2022 came around. I bought gifts for her whole family. Thoughtful stuff too, not just generic Amazon purchases. Her dad got this vintage fishing lure set because she'd mentioned he was into fly fishing. Her mom got this fancy candle collection from some boutique she'd pointed out months earlier. Jess loved it. Said I was the first boyfriend who'd actually tried with her family. Her parents seemed impressed too. Invited me to their New Year's Eve party, the whole deal. We started talking about me officially moving in come spring. Made sense financially, and we were basically living together anyway. My lease was up in April, perfect timing. Things were solid through winter and into spring. Then something shifted around late May 2023. She started mentioning her ex more. Brandon. Just casual comments at first. Then the mentions got more frequent. Brandon messaged me. Brandon's company might open an office here. Ran into Brandon at the grocery store. Dave noticed when I mentioned it during our weekly basketball game. Man, that's weird, he said. Why's she suddenly talking about this guy so much? Says they're just friends now. Nobody's just friends with an ex they bring up constantly. I should have listened, but I didn't want to be that insecure boyfriend. I trusted her. That was my first mistake. Early June, things got weirder. She'd be on her phone more, angled away from me like she didn't want me to see the screen. When I'd ask who she was texting, she'd say, just work stuff or just family. But I could see the smile on her face while she typed. That's not a work email smile. That's not a family text smile. I tried bringing it up once. Hey, you seem distracted lately. Everything good? Everything's fine, she snapped. Why are you interrogating me? I'm not interrogating. I'm asking. There's a difference. Well, it feels like you don't trust me. Classic deflection. Make me the problem for noticing her behavior changed. So I dropped it. Didn't want to start a fight over nothing. Gave her the benefit of the doubt like an absolute fool. Then came June 23rd. I took the afternoon off work to surprise her. Got to the apartment around 3 p.m. and she was on FaceTime with someone. A guy. She jumped when she heard the door. Oh, hey, you're here early. Took off work. Thought I'd surprise you. She glanced at her laptop. I'm just finishing up a work call. I went to the kitchen, started unpacking groceries. Could hear her laughing from the living room. That genuine laugh, not the polite one. When the call ended, I asked who it was. Just a work colleague. Going over design concepts. Cool. What project? Brief pause. The new client website. Nothing exciting. Want to show me? Her face tightened. It's still rough. Not ready. That night, she was distant. Kept checking her phone. Faced away from me in bed. I confronted her July 1st. Jess, something's going on. You're being paranoid. You're different. Distant. Just tell me what's wrong. She sighed. Fine. Brandon's going through a rough time. Lost his job. We've been talking because he needed someone to vent to. We're friends. Why hide it? Because I knew you'd react like this. All jealous and insecure. There it was. Insecure. We argued. She said she was protecting my feelings. I said she was protecting him over us. She told me I was ridiculous and to get over it. I ended up sleeping on the couch. Next morning, she apologized. Said she understood. She'd be more transparent. Brandon was just a friend. I wanted to believe her. July went by in this weird limbo. She'd be sweet some days, distant others. Still talking to Brandon, but claimed it was just supportive friend stuff. I tried to be understanding, tried to be the bigger person. Then came August 11th, 2023, the day that changed everything. I got home from work around 6 p.m. She was making pasta, humming to herself. Actually seemed happy for once. "Hey babe," she said when I walked in. "Good day?" "Not bad. Closed that account I've been working on." "That's great." She stirred the sauce, added some herbs. "So, I wanted to talk to you about something." My stomach dropped. Nothing good ever starts with, "I wanted to talk to you about something." "What's up?" I asked, setting my work bag down. She turned off the stove, faced me. "So, Brandon's really struggling right now. He got evicted from his apartment because he couldn't make rent after losing his job. He's been staying with his brother, but his brother's girlfriend is pregnant and they need the space." "Okay," I said slowly, already knowing where this was going. "So he needs a place to crash for a bit, just until he finds something stable. Maybe a week, 2 tops." I stared at her. "You're asking if your ex-boyfriend can stay here. Don't say it like that. He's my friend who needs help. Yes, we dated, but that was years ago. We're different people now. Where would he sleep? The couch. Obviously. Obviously. Like any of this was obvious. Jess, I don't think that's appropriate." Her expression changed. Got harder. "Why? Because you're insecure?" "No, because it's weird to have your ex-boyfriend living in your apartment." "Our apartment," she corrected. "You're on the lease too, but I've been living here longer. And he's my friend. He needs help, and I'm going to help him. Even if I'm uncomfortable with it? Yes. Because if you're uncomfortable with me having male friends, that's a you problem. I'm not going to abandon someone who needs help just because my boyfriend can't handle his insecurities." Insecurities. There was that word again. This isn't about insecurities, Jess. This is about boundaries. And respect. Respect? You want to talk about respect? You've been interrogating me for weeks about my friendship with Brandon. That's not respect. That's control. I've been asking questions because you've been shady. I've been private. There's a difference. We argued for another 30 minutes. Round and round. Same points, same defenses, same accusations. She wouldn't budge. Brandon was staying. End of discussion. Finally, she said it. The line that made my decision crystal clear. "Look, if you're so insecure about this, just sleep at a hotel for the week. I'll pay you back." Sleep at a hotel. In the apartment I was paying $1,200 a month for, with my name on the lease, while her ex-boyfriend crashes on the couch. I just looked at her. Didn't say anything for a solid 10 seconds. "Fine," I said. Her face lit up. "Thank you for being understanding." I went to the bedroom, packed my duffel, clothes, toiletries, laptop, documents. She watched from the doorway. "You don't have to take that much. It's just a week. Better safe than sorry." "When's he getting here?" I asked. "Tomorrow afternoon." I grabbed my stuff, headed for the door. She kissed me. "Thank you for being so mature about this. I love you." I didn't say it back. Just left. Drove to the nearest Hampton Inn. Booked a room for a week. Got to my room, sat on the bed, and thought about what just happened. She chose him over me. Not romantically maybe, but she chose his comfort over mine. While living in an apartment I paid for. Using a phone I paid for. Driving a car I insured. The disrespect was impressive. I pulled out my laptop. Time to handle business. First email. To the landlord, Mr. Pearson. He was in his 60s, old school guy, who ran several properties downtown. "Dear Mr. Pearson, I am writing to inform you of my intent to terminate my portion of the lease at address. As co-signer, I understand I am responsible for providing 30 days written notice per our agreement. This email serves as that notice, effective immediately. I will not be making any further rent payments beyond this month. Please coordinate with the other leaseholder, Jessica Hartley, regarding the continuation or termination of the lease. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Best regards, Alex Morrison." Center to 8:47 p.m. Second action, my phone provider's app. Logged in, found her line, removed it from my family plan, effective immediately. She'd have until midnight before service cutoff per the terms. Third action, my insurance company's website. Chat with an agent, remove the CRV from my policy. Effective end of business Monday. 45 minutes. That's how long it took to untangle myself from her life financially. I felt nothing. No guilt, no regret, just this cold clarity. She wanted to play games? Game over. Texted Dave. "Got a story for you tomorrow. Breakfast?" He replied, "Everything okay? Will be. 9 a.m. See you there." I ordered room service, ate a burger, took a shower, and slept better than I had in weeks. Saturday morning, met Dave at Jerry's diner. Told him everything over coffee. Bro, he said. That's ice cold. Respect. Had to be done. She's going to lose it when she realizes. Not my problem. I spent Saturday at the hotel gym, worked on reports, ordered pizza for dinner. My phone stayed silent. No text from Jess. Sunday, same thing. Silence. Didn't reach out. Monday, back to work. Normal day. Nothing dramatic. Closed a few accounts, sat in on meetings, grabbed lunch with colleagues. My phone rang around 2 p.m. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Hello? Heavy breathing. Someone crying. Alex? Jess. But not the confident, dismissive Jess from Friday. This was a broken, desperate Jess. Yeah? My phone stopped working. I've been trying to text you all weekend, but nothing's going through. I had to borrow Brandon's phone to call you. Brandon's phone. Of course. Okay, I said neutrally. What did you do? The phone company said I'm not on your plan anymore. I removed you. Figured you didn't need it since we're taking space. Space? I didn't say we needed space. I just asked you to stay somewhere else for a week. Same thing. It's not the same thing at all. And now I don't have a phone. How am I supposed to work? How am I supposed to communicate with clients? Buy a new plan. Plenty of providers out there. Alex, what the hell? This is crazy. What's crazy is asking your boyfriend to leave while you host your ex. This is just me adjusting to the new reality. She started crying harder. I can't afford a phone plan right now. I have bills. I need you to put me back on. Can't do that. Yes, you can. Just call them. Don't want to? Good luck, Jess. I hung up. My hands weren't even shaking. Just this steady calm. She made her choice. I made mine. She called back immediately. I declined the call. Again. Declined them all. Work resumed. Acted like nothing happened because nothing had. Just a problem removing itself from my life. Tuesday morning, email from Mr. Pearson. Alex, thank you for your notice. I have contacted Ms. Hartley regarding the lease situation. She seemed surprised by your departure. The full rent is due on the 1st as always. I trust you two will work out the financial arrangement. If the rent is not paid in full, both parties remain liable per the lease agreement. Best regards, Mr. Pearson. Translation. Pay up or both of your credits get destroyed. Not my problem. I'd given proper notice. What Jess did with that information was her concern. Tuesday afternoon, another call. Unknown number again. I answered. Alex, we need to talk about the rent. Jess, still using Brandon's phone apparently. Already handled. Gave my notice to Mr. Pearson. You can't just do that. Already did. 30 days notice per the lease. But that means I have to pay the full $1,800 this month. Correct. I can't afford that. You know I can't. Should have thought about that before playing house with your ex. We're not. This is insane. You're being vindictive. No, I'm being practical. You made it clear Brandon's comfort matters more than mine. So I removed myself from the situation. Clean break. This isn't a break, Alex. Come home. That's not my home anymore. My name might be on the lease for 30 more days, but I'm done. What about my car insurance? I got a notice that I'm not covered anymore. Yeah, removed you from my policy. Multi-car discount wasn't worth it anymore. Are you serious? I can't drive without insurance. That's illegal. Then get your own policy. Plenty of companies out there. I can't afford insurance right now. My rates will be ridiculous. Again, not my problem. Should have considered the consequences. Consequences? Of what? Helping a friend? Of disrespecting your boyfriend? Silence. Then, quieter. More manipulative. Baby, please. I'm sorry. I should have handled this better. Come back and we'll talk about this like adults. No. No? Just no? Just no. We're done, Jess. Completely done. Don't contact me again. You can't just leave me like this. Watch me. Hung up. Blocked Brandon's number. If she wanted to reach me, she'd have to try harder. Wednesday came and went. No contact. Blissful silence. Thursday morning, 10:30 a.m. My office phone rang. Alex Morrison. Mr. Morrison, this is Mr. Pearson. We need to discuss the apartment. What about it? Ms. Hartley has informed me she cannot make the full rent payment. She's requesting an extension or a payment plan. That's between you and her. I gave my notice. Technically, you're still liable until the end of September. If she defaults, I can pursue both of you for the full amount. Then pursue her. I've fulfilled my obligation by giving notice. Mr. Morrison, I'm trying to avoid involving collections or legal action. If you could perhaps work something out with Ms. Hartley? Mr. Pearson, with respect, she chose to keep the apartment knowing I was leaving. That's her problem to solve. He sighed. Very well. I'll document this conversation. Good day. Friday came. 4 days since I'd left. Still at the hotel, still living out of my duffel bag, still not caring. My cell phone rang around 3 p.m. Number Y didn't recognize, but local area code. Hello? Hi, is this Alex Morrison? Female voice, older, clipped tone. Speaking. This is Karen calling from the building management for apartment complex. I'm trying to reach Jessica Hartley, but her phone is disconnected. Do you have an alternate contact for her? No, try her in person. We've been trying. No one answers the door. Not sure what you want me to do about that? Well, you're listed as the co-tenant. We need to inform her that without payment arrangements by Monday, we'll begin the eviction process. That's unfortunate, but I'm not living there anymore. Sir, you're still legally responsible. I gave 30 days notice via email on Friday. Check with Mr. Pearson. We have that notice. But until September 30th, you're still liable for rent if she doesn't pay. Got it. Is there anything else? Pause. No, sir. Have a good day. The dominoes were falling. Rent unpaid, phone disconnected, insurance canceled, no way to work without a phone for her freelance clients, no way to drive legally without insurance. One decision, one moment of complete disrespect. And she'd gambled her entire life on me rolling over. Bad bet. Friday evening, I checked out of the hotel. Drove to my old apartment, the one I'd kept this whole time, because my lease didn't end until April. The place I'd been paying $1,450 a month for while also covering most of Jess's rent. Walked in, dropped my bag, looked around. Nothing had changed. My furniture, my kitchen, my space. All still here, exactly as I'd left it a year ago, when I started basically living at her place. I'd been paying double rent for a year. $1,450 here, $1,200 there. $2,650 monthly just on housing, plus her phone, plus her insurance. The numbers made me sick. Not because of the money itself, but because of what it represented. I'd been subsidizing her life while she invited her ex to stay in the apartment I was paying for. I ordered Chinese food, cracked open an overpriced local IPA from the six-pack I'd left in my fridge, and watched TV on my couch. My couch, my TV, my fridge, my apartment, mine. Saturday morning, I slept in. No alarm, no schedule, just pure relaxation. Made coffee in my kitchen, eggs and toast, sat on my balcony watching the city wake up. My phone rang. Unknown number. Colorado area code, but not one I recognized. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Alex? Jess. Voice completely wrecked. Please don't hang up. Where are you calling from? A payphone. At a gas station. A payphone. Didn't even know those still existed. What do you want, Jess? I need help, please. I'm in trouble. What kind of trouble? They evicted me. Well, not officially yet, but they're starting the process. And I can't reach any of my clients without a phone. And I can't afford to get my car insurance back, so I can't drive. And Brandon left because he couldn't deal with the stress. And I don't have anywhere to go. Everything in one breathless rush. Crisis mode. That sounds difficult. Difficult? Alex, I'm about to be homeless. You should have thought about that before you chose your ex over me. I wasn't choosing him. I was helping a friend. You chose his comfort over mine. Same result. This is insane. You're punishing me for being a good person. No, I'm removing myself from being disrespected. There's a difference. I apologized. What more do you want? Nothing. I don't want anything from you. That's the point. Crying now. Real ugly crying. Please. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have asked you to leave. It was wrong. I see that now. Please come back. Please help me fix this. No. No. Just like that? Just like that. But I need you. I can't do this alone. Should have considered that before. Alex, please, I'm begging you. And there it was. The woman who'd called me insecure 4 days ago was now begging on a payphone at a gas station. Jess, let me explain something. You gambled. You gambled that I'd just accept whatever you wanted because I'd been accepting everything else. You gambled that I'd be fine being pushed aside for your ex because I'd been fine with everything else. You gambled wrong. It wasn't a gamble. I just didn't think exactly. You didn't think. You didn't think about respect. You didn't think about boundaries. You didn't think about consequences. And now you're dealing with those consequences. This is cruel. No, this is fair. You made choices. I made choices. Now we both live with them. I have nowhere to go. Figure it out. You're an adult. Alex, don't call me again. Don't contact me. We're done. Completely. Forever. But I hung up. Blocked that payphone number too, for good measure. My hands still weren't shaking. My heart rate was normal. I felt nothing except this quiet satisfaction. She tried to make me the bad guy for having boundaries, tried to gaslight me into accepting disrespect, tried to use my feelings against me. And when that failed, when I simply removed myself from her games, reality hit her like a freight train. No phone, no car insurance, no rent money, no boyfriend covering her expenses, no one to bail her out, just consequences. Dave called me that afternoon. Dude, are you free? Grabbing drinks at Murphy's with some guys from the rec league? Yeah, I'm free. How you holding up? Better than ever, honestly. And I meant it. Showed up at Murphy's around 6 p.m. Dave and 3 other guys from basketball. Good dudes who didn't pry but clearly knew something had gone down. So, Dave said after the first round arrived, want to share with the class? I gave them the abbreviated version. Girlfriend wanted X to stay over. I left and pulled all financial support. She's now facing eviction. Bro, said Mike, one of the point guards. That's savage. I love it. Necessary, not savage, I corrected. Same thing sometimes, added Josh. She really thought you'd just accept that? Apparently. The audacity, Mike said, shaking his head. Women really think they can get away with anything these days. Some women, Dave corrected. Not all. But yeah, some really do think that. We drank, talked sports, made plans for next week's games. Normal guy stuff. No one treated me like I'd done something wrong. If anything, they seemed to respect the decision. Man, I wish I'd had your spine when my ex pulled similar garbage, Josh said later. I just kept trying to make it work. Wasted 2 more years. Live and learn, I said. You learned quick. Props. The night ended around 10 p.m. Drove home, my real home, sober and satisfied. Sunday, silence. Glorious, peaceful silence. Monday at work, focused and productive. Closed 2 accounts before lunch. Boss complimented my recent performance. Whatever you're doing, Morrison, keep it up. Best numbers you've had all year. Thanks, Mark. Just focused. Well, stay focused. This kind of work gets noticed at review time. Raises and promotions. That's what happens when you're not distracted by relationship drama. Tuesday afternoon, my work email pinged. Unknown sender, but the subject line caught my attention. Please read. Jess. She'd tracked down my work email somehow. I almost deleted it without reading. Almost. But curiosity got the better of me. Alex, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need you to understand what you've done. I'm homeless. Actually homeless. Sleeping on my friend Rachel's couch, but she can only let me stay a few more days. I've lost 3 clients because I couldn't respond to their emails or calls without a phone. I can't get to job interviews without a car I can legally drive. Everything is falling apart, and it's all because you decided to be petty. I made one mistake. 1. I asked you to stay somewhere else for a few days so I could help a friend in crisis, and you destroyed my entire life over it. Do you feel good about yourself? Does this feel like justice to you? Ruining someone's life because your ego got bruised? I don't even recognize you anymore. The Alex I knew was kind and understanding. This version is cold and vindictive. I hope you can live with what you've done. Jess. I read it twice. Then I drafted a response. Jess, you didn't make one mistake. You made several. Mistake 1, prioritizing your ex's comfort over your boyfriend's. Mistake 2, calling me insecure for having legitimate concerns. Mistake 3, telling me to stay at a hotel in an apartment I was paying for. Mistake 4, assuming I'd just accept disrespect because I'd been accommodating. Mistake 5, building your entire financial life around someone you clearly didn't respect. I didn't destroy your life. I simply stopped supporting it. There's a crucial difference. You had every opportunity to choose differently. You chose him. I chose me. That's not revenge. That's self-respect. Don't email me again. Alex. Sent. 5 minutes later, IT called. Hey, Alex, you've been blocked by an external sender. Just wanted to confirm that's intentional? Yeah, that's fine. No problem. Let me know if you need anything else. She tried to email again and got blocked. Perfect. Wednesday, nothing. Thursday, nothing. Friday, the end of my first full week without Jess in my life. I felt lighter. No more walking on eggshells about her ex. No more stress about whether she was being shady. No more paying for someone who saw me as a wallet. Just peace. Dave invited me to a party that Saturday. Friend of a friend type thing. Casual backyard barbecue. Might be some single women there, he mentioned. No pressure, just saying. Not ready for that yet. Fair enough. But you're coming anyway, right? Yeah, I'll come. The party was exactly what I needed. Good food, good people, low-key atmosphere. Met a few new people. Had actual interesting conversations about normal things. One girl, Amy, worked in marketing for a downtown firm. We talked for like an hour about random stuff. Books, travel, embarrassing concert stories from college. No drama, no red flags, just easy conversation. She asked for my number at the end of the night. I gave it to her. Dave raised his eyebrows at me when he saw. I just shrugged. 1 week, he said. It took you 1 week to bounce back. Not bouncing back, just not staying down. Same thing, man. Same thing. 2 weeks later, end of August, I got a message on LinkedIn from someone named Brandon. The Brandon. Hey man, I know this is weird, but I wanted to reach out. Jess told me what happened, and I feel like you should know the truth. Nothing happened between us. She was just helping me out during a rough time. But I can see how it looked, and I'm sorry for any part I played in your breakup. That wasn't my intention. I stared at the message for a solid minute. Then I closed LinkedIn without responding. His intentions didn't matter. Her choices did. And her choices were clear. September rolled around. My official last day on the lease at Jess's apartment was the 30th. Mr. Pearson sent me a final email. Alex, Ms. Hartley has vacated the premises. Final rent was not paid. She left minimal forwarding information. I will be pursuing collections for the unpaid balance. Your early notice and clear documentation of intent to terminate will be helpful if this proceeds to legal action. You should not expect further contact regarding this property. Best regards, Mr. Pearson. Translation. She bailed completely. Didn't pay final rent, probably got evicted, left me potentially on the hook legally. I forwarded the email to my lawyer buddy Eric, who'd helped me review the original lease. Should I be worried? He called me back an hour later. You're fine. You gave proper notice, you documented everything, and she was the one who stayed. Any judge will see you acted in good faith. If Pearson tries to come after you, we'll shut it down fast. Thanks, Eric. Man, this whole story is insane. She really thought you'd just keep paying for everything while she hosted her ex? Apparently. The entitlement. It's wild. Mid-September, Amy and I had gone out a few times. Nothing serious, just coffee, lunch, one dinner. She was cool. No games, no drama, just a normal person. I told her the basic story one night over dinner. She just shook her head. That's awful. I'm sorry you went through that. It happens, but I handled it. You definitely did. Most guys would have just stayed and tortured themselves trying to make it work. Waste of time. Either someone respects you or they don't. She didn't. End of story. I respect that mentality, she said. Too many people stay in situations that make them miserable because they're scared of being alone. Being alone is better than being disrespected. Facts. We dated casually through fall. Nothing too serious. Both of us just enjoying the simplicity of no drama. She had her life, I had mine. We spent time together when it made sense. No pushing for commitment, no games, no exes crashing on couches, just normal, healthy adult interaction. October came around. I got a random Instagram DM from someone I didn't recognize. The message just said, "You're a piece of shit," with no context. I clicked on the profile. Private account, no posts visible, profile picture was some generic nature photo. Blocked without responding. Not worth my time. Dave later told me Jess had been talking about me to mutual friends, saying I'd abandoned her, left her homeless, destroyed her life over nothing. People who actually know you didn't buy it, he said. But some people who only know her side seem to think you're the bad guy. Let them think that. Doesn't bother you? Why would it? I know what happened. You know what happened. Anyone who matters knows what happened. Everyone else can think whatever they want. Mature take. Learned it the hard way. By November, Jess was firmly in my past. Didn't think about her. Didn't care what she was doing. Didn't wonder if I'd made the right choice. I'd made the only choice. The self-respecting choice. Amy and I were still seeing each other, though it was becoming clearer we were better as friends than as a couple. We had that conversation over coffee one Saturday. I like hanging out with you, she said, but I don't think this is going anywhere long term. I feel the same way. No hard feelings? None at all. Friends? Friends. And we actually stayed friends. Novel concept, I know. December rolled around, holiday season, end of year reviews at work. I got a solid raise and a promotion. Senior financial analyst. Better title, better pay, more responsibility. Boss pulled me aside after the announcement. You've really turned it around this year, Morrison. Whatever changes you made in your personal life, they're showing up in your work. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Keep it up and you're looking at management track within 2 years. Management. Real career progression. The kind of future I'd been working toward all along. And I'd almost let Jess derail it. Almost let her drama and disrespect consume my focus and energy. Almost. Christmas came around. Spent it with my family, caught up with old friends from college, enjoyed the time off. My mom asked about Jess once. I gave her the abbreviated version. Good riddance, she said. That girl never seemed right for you anyway. New Year's Eve, I went to Dave's party. Same group of friends, same casual atmosphere. Counted down to midnight, toasted with champagne, actually enjoyed myself. Mid-January, I ran into Rachel at the grocery store. The friend whose couch Jess had crashed on back in August. She saw me, hesitated, then walked over. Alex, hey, Rachel. Awkward silence. Then she said, look, I just want you to know, I heard both sides of what happened. Jess told me her version, but I also talked to Dave. I don't think you were wrong. Okay? She's back with her parents now. In Kansas. Moved back in November. Good for her. She's still pretty bitter about the whole thing. Blames you for everything. She would. Rachel shifted her grocery basket. For what it's worth, she told me what she said to you. About the hotel thing. If someone said that to me, I'd have done the same thing you did. Appreciate that. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. Take care, Alex. She walked off. I finished my shopping, went home, didn't think about it again. February brought a cold snap. Negative temperatures, snow everywhere. Perfect excuse to stay inside and focus on work. Amy and I had transitioned to actual friendship by then. She started dating some guy from her office. Seemed happy. We'd grab lunch occasionally, no weirdness. How's the new relationship? I asked her once over sandwiches. Good. Normal. He's not dramatic, doesn't have crazy exes, just a regular guy. Sounds perfect. It is. You seeing anyone? Nope, not really looking. Fair enough. You seem good, though. I am good. March hit and work got busy. Tax season crunch, everyone at the bank stressed and overworked. I pulled long hours, came home exhausted, barely had time for anything else. Got a promotion offer mid-month. Team lead position, significant raise, more responsibility. Didn't even have to interview for it. Boss just called me into his office and offered it straight up. You've earned it, Morrison. Most consistent performer on the team. Want you leading the junior analysts. I'll take it. Good. Starts April 1st. Signed the paperwork that day. New salary was $89,000, up from $71,000. Almost 20 grand more annually. Dave took me out to celebrate that weekend. Sports bar, wings, couple local IPAs. Bro, you're killing it, he said. Promotion, raise, no drama, living your best life. It's been a good year. Remember last August? When you were at that hotel? Yeah. Look at you now. Some dudes would still be trying to fix things with her. Waste of time. Exactly. You just cut it clean and moved on. Respect. Early April, I got a text from an unknown number. Didn't recognize it, but it was a Colorado area code. Hey Alex, it's Brandon. Got your number from mutual friends. I know this is random, but I wanted to apologize for my part in what went down between you and Jess. I had no idea you were together when she offered to let me stay. She told me you guys had broken up. I would never have stayed there if I'd known. Anyway, hope you're doing well. I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. His apology didn't change anything. Whether he knew or didn't know, whether Jess lied to him or not, none of it mattered. She made her choice. I made mine. End of story. May rolled around. Weather finally warmed up. Started taking the Tacoma on weekend drives through the mountains just to clear my head and enjoy the scenery. One Saturday, I drove up to Estes Park, walked around the town, grabbed lunch at this diner with a view of the mountains, sat there eating a burger, watching tourists take photos, just existing peacefully. My phone buzzed. Text from Rachel's number. This is Jess. Rachel let me use her phone. I know you blocked me everywhere, but I need to tell you something. I'm engaged. To someone I met in Kansas. He's good to me and treats me right. I just wanted you to know I've moved on and I'm happy. I hope you can be happy too. I stared at the message for about 10 seconds. Then I blocked Rachel's number too. She wanted a reaction. Wanted me to care that she was engaged. Wanted validation or jealousy or something. She got nothing. Finished my burger, paid my bill, drove home. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.